A star is born in Max Klesmit, and another defensive back is headed to Madison in 2025. I'm Rajiv. He's Justin. It's the Bucky Report.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective. Woo-hoo! Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome into the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajiv and Justin, in for our Sunday evening live episode to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers football and basketball. On today's show, we talk about the Indiana game, the Penn State game, and Max Klesmit absolutely blowing the doors off the Kohl Center. Man, it was incredible to watch. We also get into another defensive back, Jameer Scott, headed to Madison in the 25 class, and more about Cody Hadad and some additional offers he has, and a quick preview of Minnesota and Michigan State this week. Justin, my friend, I'm sorry to hear that you lost the Locked On Badgers Bowl.
We don't need to discuss this.
I mean, I just wanted to give you if you wanted to get, is there anything you want to say about this game? I'm sorry. I feel for you.
No,
I mean,
whenever your kicker is the guy that loses it for you, it's like, it's always the most frustrating thing for any fan base. You're looking at it, you're like, they've got exactly one thing that they're responsible for, is to kick the ball between those two bars every single time. And then you see a guy shank a gimme, and it happened today again too for the Bills. And it's like, good God, like it's getting to the point where you think a team is just like, I will pay you a premium if I can expect you to actually hit your kicks when I need you to, in high pressure situations. If Green Bay goes into next season with that guy as the kicker, then the coaching staff needs to be held accountable, because they're clearly not holding their players accountable, or Joe Barry for that matter. I know people. The head coach said that he thought that the defense wasn't that bad, but in the biggest drive of the season, when they needed to make a stop, they rolled over and played dead. And especially on the game-winning touchdown, 5-yard touchdown run, it's like everyone just kind of lays down. It's like, oh my God.
well, I mean, I think the Buffalo Bills are kicking their kicking their behinds on the other kicker too. Yikes, they had a rough one tonight. But it's been a good NFL weekend, and we can bring it back. I know there's a lot of Packers fans that listen to this show, so I do feel your pain. My team didn't even make the playoffs, so I mean, there's that. Jay Broadbar, first time live. Thanks for joining us, Jay. Appreciate that. All right, Justin, let's kick it off with our 3 takes from the week. Anything you wanna take on? Hit me, Justin.
Yeah. Max Klesmit is really good.
Great
I'll get that out as number 1. I think Wisconsin is solidifying its place in the Big Ten. It's kind of, everyone else seems to be kind of cannibalizing each other. And I say that despite the loss to Penn State. But some of these teams are just having really bad losses. It's just what's going on right now. But Purdue seems to be starting to come round into shape in the league. They're going to be problematic if they can start to just beat on everybody. And it looks like that might be the case going forward. And then finally, yeah, we're just killing it in the recruiting, especially for secondary guys. The football team is doing an excellent job. They got 6 guys already in this particular class, which is incredible. I look at this group and I think that they have 5 guys that I think are going to end up being 4 stars, and the other guy's going to be a high 3-star. So I think we're in really good shape going forward.
I love it. You're so right. I mean, the recruiting is really taking shape. Number 1 for me also is Max Klesmit. A star is born. He's a star. Like we've literally seen this man transform from an actively good player to a great star. I mean, that's what he is. He is now going to be someone that I feel like we're going to rely on throughout the rest of the season. So very impressive stuff. Number 2 for me is I'm not really sure what is going on with the Badger defense. We're going to get into it tonight, but it is honestly perplexing to me. Mm-hmm. I really don't get what has happened to it and why it is what it is. I know there's, we had a great discussion on Locked On Badgers reaction show after the Indiana game about whether it's effort or talent or this and that. So there's so much to get into. We're going to get into it more tonight. And number 3, non-Badgers related. Watching the Bills Chiefs game really brought up bad memories for me of the Manning Brady days. As you know, I'm a Colts fan. That was, man, I feel for Bills fans. I really do. I have some really close friends of mine who are Bills fans, and they are hurting. I'm sure they are. What a tough way to lose yet again to Patrick Mahomes in a really close game. Just brutal, man. Oh, awful.
Yeah, it's been a rough go for them. And this is starting to become legacy stuff for Allen. He has got to at some point win here, or he's kind of in that Peyton Manning category where he's like really, really good, but he just can't seem to find a way to get to the Super Bowl. That's what's going on with Allen right now. He's been in the league a good chunk of time here.
Yeah.
We'll start expecting you to break through.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm feeling the pain. I really do. And it's gross. We are at the Bucky Report on Twitter, YouTube, and wherever you can get your podcast. If you like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button so you know when we make new content. All right, man. Let's talk some basketball. We lost to Penn State this week. We beat Indiana. There's really only one place to start. 26 points, 5 of 7 from 3, 72% field goal percentage. You heard that right, 72% from a guard, by the way. Just doing everything on the floor. Max Klesmit continues his run. Now, this is the 4th game. So he's averaged 19.5 points for the last 4 games. And the one game he had 10 points. He only played 15 minutes because he was in foul trouble at Penn State. And had he not gotten into early foul trouble, who knows what would have happened. And we very well could have won that game and still be undefeated in the conference. What is your take on Max Klesmit right now? He's incredible. Like, where do you see this coming from? Where do you see this going?
Well, I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see what level he can maintain. Obviously, he's not going to stay at this level, but I will take the heater that he's on for as long as he's able to maintain it. I would hope that he can stay at least a plus shooter for the remainder of the season. But as long as he can do this, he's going to draw additional attention. And that's really a massive thing because – one of the things that I wanted to talk about tonight when we were coming into this is that I feel like Chucky kind of needs to be a little bit more assertive on the offensive end. We've been all for how good he's been running the team, but it's gotten to the point where he needs to be a little bit more selfish because he's kind of becoming a non-factor to an extent offensively. And I think that teams are kind of, figuring out that they don't necessarily have to worry about him as much.
Yeah. Will Hanna with a disagreeing comment to me. I like it. Now he says, knock off the star talk. He has some really good games, but as of late, to call him a star at this point is premature. Will, I would say this. I think what he's doing in the last 4 games, I feel like he's a budding star. I'm not saying, yeah, you're right. He's not like this amazing star in college basketball, but he is the star of our team right now. He has been the most consistent player, and the confidence that he's playing with, that's my big thing right now is he's actually doing more things, creating his own shot more, driving to the hoop, taking shots late in the shot clock, which normally he's not going to be the one doing that. He's doing those things because he's more confident. And that's what I feel like. So it's almost as if he could have done these things all along, but he wasn't taking those chances. Now he is, and you're almost seeing leaps in his game and gains in who he is right before our eyes, Justin. Like it's happening right now. And I think he is a star. Like he is the star of our team right now, undoubtedly. And I just feel like I agree with you that it's not going to last forever like this. And he's not going to score 25 points a game the rest of the season, but he is going to be a bigger player. I mean, would you agree with me there that now for the rest of the season, he is going to be a guy that's going to take a few more big shots at big times? It's not always just going to be Chucky or whether it's AJ or whoever's taking those shots. Like he is going to be more involved than he ever has been. And I think this stretch, it wasn't just one game. Now it's really 4. And again, Penn State, a little bit of an anomaly, but he only played 15 minutes. I think this is going to continue to a small extent. You think I'm wrong?
I mean, he has been quite honestly far more assertive than he's been at any point in his career up to this point. And I think that that's the biggest takeaway that we've had. And I honestly, as long as he's doing that, he's always been a fairly decent shooter. We just haven't seen him necessarily be as assertive as we'd like at times. And that's something that Ryan has, quite honestly, really been, argued about for quite some time now, that he's frustrated, like he'll pass up shots and things like that. That's a big deal. I mean, him just taking the shots that are there, he's a positive for us from an offensive standpoint. Like he's a guy that his usage is, you're okay with going up a little bit because he's typically pretty productive. He doesn't normally have games where he shoots really poorly. And I compared him to Brad Davison a little bit. I don't think that he's the type of guy who's going to sit there and just keep chucking if he's missing shots. But it's similar in the way that he scores. Like, he's a guy, when he's on a heater, he will just flat out torch you until he starts missing. And he's capable of dropping, 20 points on somebody quickly. He's got a really pure shot when he's on. And that's what we've seen so far. If he continues to do this, he has a chance to be somebody that is going to be a force to be reckoned with. And that's with already having, somebody out there in store who I think teams have really had to account for. That opens things up for everyone else. You have other guys that are going to be able to get more opportunity. And we've talked about, as much as we talked about guys like Blackwell, he's not ready for like massive attention. Like, he's mostly productive right now because of the fact that he's like the third or fourth option the way teams are looking at him. And he's just kind of sneaky good. Like, he gets away with things that, he does because there's other guys that are drawing more of the defense's attention.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. So you brought up Chucky a little bit. Let's talk about him a little bit more. I see what you're saying about his obviously offensive. He's looks like he's being a little too unselfish, and you want him to shoot a little more. My biggest concern with him lately has been the early game turnovers.
Yeah,
like he's just playing. It's almost as if, like, look, if he's not going to have that offensive, big push, and he doesn't have that on his shoulders now, which is a good thing. He can be the floor general, which he's doing well. I am surprised, though, like in the last two games especially. Now, he's still got a great assist to turnover ratio on the season. I'm not saying that's not good, but it's almost as if the start of the game is a bit of an issue, and this has been a thing now for a couple games. Do you think there's any reason for that? What are you seeing at the beginning of the game? I'm seeing just a complete lack of effort, and they're not locked in, which really surprises me because I kind of put that on Greg Gard when I'm seeing like players not locked in 2-3 games in a row. You're having rough starts. I think there's something else there, and I'm not sure what it is. I'm not saying I have the solution, but I do feel like Greg Gard's culpable a little bit for some of these early starts that we're having, and Chucky's been a bit of a part of that.
When it's continuous, you have to start looking at it and say that, this is something that needs to be rectified by the coaching staff. And I think it's been fairly consistent recently. Like, they need to start looking at it and saying, hey, we have got to get locked in quicker. Like, one of these games that's going to start hurting us, where we're going to get behind early and somebody's just going to shoot the lights out because we let them get confident. That's what happened with Penn State. Penn State's not better than us, but they got out there and we let them just get hot and confident, and they shot well above what their normal percentages are. And we need to lock in defensively early and not turn the ball over, and just put a team like that down early and quickly, and then just do what you do. Like, honestly, if they can take the confidence from them and build a lead quickly, a lot of these teams are going to roll over and play dead. I don't think there's that many strong teams. Like, there's not a lot of strong mental teams in the Big Ten this year. I think there's maybe 4 or 5 teams that I worry about coming back if you build a lead on them quickly. And that's probably Nebraska, Purdue, obviously, Illinois, maybe a team like, Michigan State's been a little better lately. But you look at it, most of these teams, if you can step on their throat early, they're just going to roll over. They just don't know how to win to that level. Northwestern's probably another one, just because I think that they're gritty, but they kind of lack the talent. So if you can get on their throat early, I think that you can kind of take them out of their element a little bit.
You brought up a couple other teams, Illinois, namely, they winning the Big Ten just got a little bit harder now because Shannon TSJ is back for Illinois. I was talking to an Illini guy today on a Big Ten show, and he was telling me about how I'm like the legal side of it. And so Shannon, if you haven't heard, Shannon is going to be returning to play. Whether or not, how much game time he gets, who knows? That's up to the university and everything they're doing. But that does make winning the Big Ten a little harder now.
I'm just going to say, basketball, this isn't basketball related. I think it's disgusting that they're letting him play until this is figured out. Like, realistically, with the allegations that are out there, what you should be telling him to do is say, you need to go ahead and deal with this. You can come back when things are figured out, but this is a distraction of the team. This is something that we don't agree with. You need to have this figured out. Then if it's clear that there was no wrongdoing, you're welcome back. But until we figure out what's going on here, this is no different than any other crime that would happen that a player would be suspended for. I don't understand why we're looking at it in this regard where it's like, well, he's a really good player. Like, that's kind of disgusting and seedy to me that we're going to just let it slide because of the caliber of player he is. You know dang well that if this guy was a, ninth man on the team, he would not be back on the floor playing. They would tell him to take a step away from the team and handle his business, and then we'll worry about him coming back after that.
Yeah, it's a fair point. And obviously, I admittedly don't know what evidence they have or don't have or anything like that. And it's going to be very interesting to see like what Illinois does, what the team does, how the team responds. You had, in our group chat with Ryan, you had said the other day something about how now this could be a total distraction, right? I mean, it's just kind of their rhythm could be thrown off. Like, they've actually been playing pretty well. They're 6-2, I believe, in conference. They're a half game behind the Badgers. Everything could be a little bit different now, even if he does come back. How will they instantly be better now, or does this throw off the chemistry a little bit? So it's a fair point to bring up. Back to the Badgers though a little bit. We gave up 79 points, Justin, 79 points to Indiana, a team that when you watch the game, they honestly didn't really look that good. Renew looked fantastic. They were without their starting center. They have some pretty good players. I think Galloway looks like a really good guard who can shoot the ball and who's very versatile. But once again, we're giving up a lot of points. Now, we scored 91, which we score 91, we're going to win most games. But there is something to be said for now having some defensive issues. After the Providence game, things got a little better, right? We know we have issues with athletic guards. And I kind of thought that after that game, we moved into a time where we were actually protecting the paint pretty well. We were outscoring our opponents in the paint quite a bit. That's kind of gone the other way a little bit now. And rim protection has been an issue all year, of course, but now there's so much dribble penetration happening, and it's frankly just been too easy for people to score. And then when you see them dishing out, we're still not closing down shooters very well. This has become a problem. I think this is something that we need to talk about now. So talk to me about your thoughts on the defense, and not only in this game, but where you see it kind of trending throughout the year and how you see it moving forward, because this could bite us in the ass later.
Well, I think athletically, we're going to always struggle with athletic backcourts, teams that can actually get downhill and drive. I think we've done a pretty poor job of defending it so far this year. And that's not even just the guards. It's been on the interior. I've seen Wall get flat out abused for several games where he's just looked poor when guys get downhill and get close to the rim. They just go right past him. It's like, what is going on out here? This is not the player we've grown accustomed to watching over the last 4 years. Quite honestly, they just need to tighten up. And I don't know if it's going to require them to back off a little bit and take their lumps maybe from the perimeter, but I would much rather play that than have guys just blow by you for a layup line the whole game.
I agree, Justin.
Far less likely they're going to just torch you from three than they are going to, just score on easy layups if there's nobody that's able to stop them when they get downhill.
Nothing is more frustrating when you're watching a basketball game, for me at least, than seeing just layup after layup and dunk after dunk and just easy bucket at the rim, which is so frustrating. By the way, we did not talk. We're both wearing black t-shirts today, by the way. What is this all about? This is pretty funny.
I just went to the closet. I needed something that didn't make it look like I was wearing all red.
Jay Broadbar, we do see your question. We will get to that during the football section. I know Justin already started and he's going to address it. Listen, I think that my biggest concern, Justin, going forward is where can this actually take us? Like, we're going to be in games where we're not shooting the ball well. We're going to have to rely on our defense at some point. Now, we talked the other day about how theoretically when we're not shooting as well, we might kind of lock in a little more defensively. But do you feel like, my question is, how far can we actually go with this? Like, does this now lower does the defense you're seeing lower your ceiling prediction for this team going into March?
If this continues, 100%, because I don't think that this team is good enough to be we can flip a switch. I think that if you're going to play well defensively, you have to practice at it and really put that effort in consistently, because here's the thing with that. If you turn off the level of effort on defense and then you try to turn it back on, it's going to throw off your offensive game, because you're going to be expending a lot more energy and you're not going to be used to making that jump back to the opposite side of the court where you have to suddenly do it. And you're a little bit more drained than you normally would. Suddenly your jump shot's not quite as pure because you lost a little bit of energy and you're tired. So these guys need to be continuing to work on this, because do you really feel honestly like we have a chance and heck of beating Purdue with this kind of defense? They are going destroy us if we play defense like this against them. Now, maybe we turn it up because that's a big game, but I don't want that to be the case, because guess what? When you're a 2 or 3 seed in the tournament and you get dropped on a 13 or 14 seed, you're going to lose the game probably, because suddenly the other team gets hot and you can't stop them because you let them start getting some easy looks early and you figure that you just run them off the court with your offense. Well, for the most part, Wisconsin has been able to do that, but all it takes is one bad game. Like, you have a game where you get cold from 3, we could very easily lose. I think it affects your rebounding too, because it's an effort thing. I don't like the fact that where this team is weak right now is in their effort.
It is strange, right? I don't feel like that happens a lot with a guard team. You don't see these effort issues, and it just almost has to be. But the thing that stinks is, like, when we were poor offensively, we were stronger defensively, and now it's kind of vice versa. So it's like the energy went to that side, which is great, but then it got taken away from the defense, which, I know we've talked about how whether you can really get up for it or not, but man, it is difficult. Let's get into some comments. This is a good one from Tyler Strieber. He says, I don't like guards rotations. It's either all starters with one bench guy, usually Blackwell, or one starter with 4 bench guys. It's predictable and not very effective, in my opinion. And then he says, Winter, Gilmore, and McGee are almost exclusively played together. Doesn't make sense to me. What's your thought on this? Talk to me about your thought on his rotations, Justin.
He does, and quite frankly, I called it out in the last game. I hated the swap out we did after Klesmit went on his heater. We swapped out like 4 guys, and I was like, what are you doing? Like, this is changing all continuity in this game. I'd much rather have Blackwell or whoever come in with the guys that are out on the court already, and you have most of your defense intact still, instead of just throwing 4 guys out there and be like, all right, well, your turn, go out there, lock in on defense. You have 5 guys that haven't been out on the court playing together. You want a couple people that are locked in a little bit more so somebody can feel their way out, rather than have everybody scramble and kind of get locked in mentally at the same time.
Yeah. Will Hanna says Bucky is one of the best in the Big Ten, and when they lose, it's more about what they did or didn't do than the opposition. Dark Ray says, our lack of athleticism in the interior is really problematic with Crowell and Wall. That puts too much pressure on the guards. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about that. They have their place. Those guys are fantastic, especially offensively. They do really good things, and they work hard defensively, but we do just kind of lack that interior athleticism. And Tyler says Crowell's a poor rim defender for being 7'1". So, Justin, any other thoughts on the Penn State and Indiana games? We are still top of the conference. We are half a game up over Purdue and Illinois and a couple other teams as well. But I mean, anything else you want to touch on with these 2 games before we get into some player ratings?
No, I think that, honestly, I'm a little let down that we dropped the Penn State game. Like, I thought that these were 2 winnable games that we should have been able to, if this team is what we hope they are, these are games that they need to win. And they need to put these teams away and put them down, because both of them were middle of the road Big Ten teams. Like, these are not teams that should challenge you. If you're going to be losing, you should be losing to the Purdue, Illinois. Quite frankly, those are the only 2 that I look at that I'm really overly impressed with their play, where it feels like they're capable of really challenging you. Most of these other teams look like if you come to play, you should be able to take care of business. You're more talented than them. You are tougher mentally. These are games that you should be able to just take care of business on.
Agree with you on that. We'll see how the Big Ten shakes out. So getting back to the Indiana game, I started I'm going to do some player ratings on Twitter, at Rajiv Badgers after every basketball game. So what I'm going to do, Justin, is I'm going to tell you what I rated all of the guys. I only did the bench players that played over 10 minutes, only 3 bench players. So I want your take on whether you think my rating is, you want to go higher on yours, lower, or you agree with me. Okay. And then also put in the comments what you guys think too, and we'll pop up on the screen. So for Chucky, I gave Chucky a 6 out of 10. And I just said some old untimely turnovers early, and his steals were great. He's still a good player, but I thought the way he started really kind of helped lower that score for me. And of course, his offensive woes. 6 out of 10 for Chucky. What do you think?
I think that's about right. I think you could go 6.5, but if we're not doing halves, I don't.
Yeah,
really,
I'm just doing whole numbers here.
Yeah, if we're just doing whole numbers, I really don't have to take issue with it. He's somewhere between a 6 and a 7 to me.
Yeah. Max, I think we're going to agree on this. 10 out of 10 for Max Klesmit. That's easy enough. We've talked about him a lot. AJ Store, I put it a 7. I said good production in the second half, but still think his shot selection would be better, could be better. What do you think about a 7 for AJ Storr in this game?
I actually would give him an 8. He wasn't overly efficient shooting. I think it was 3 of 8. But on that 3 of 8, he had 15 points. And that to me is high efficiency. Anytime you're getting more than you're up that much where you have almost double the points of your shots, I'll take that every time. And that's what we've seen where Blackwell's been really good at that too. But yeah, I thought Storr played pretty well for the most part. He still, yes, he does force some things, and that's why I can't give him a score higher than an 8. But I thought that he was pretty productive for how limited he was in terms of the amount of opportunities he took.
Do you feel like his shot selection is going to improve?
I think it will. I think he's new to this team, and I think the expectations are just far greater for him to have better shot selection in general. I think long-term for him, aspirations-wise, if he does want to play in the NBA, he has to. And I think that's probably what Greg Gard's telling him. He's like, you cannot go into the NBA taking this poor shot selection. You'll be back out within 2 years, because the NBA does not take guys, especially as somebody who probably projects best as like a bench player or a fringe starter. And that's that's not me looking down on Storr. That's, I think, what he is at this point. He's a guy who could develop into more than that. But as of right now, he's got a long ways to go in terms of his secondary stats and his ability to be efficient offensively. And until he proves that he can do those two things, NBA teams are going to look at him as more than probably a guy who's a rotational piece.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Tyler Wall, this game only. I put 7 out of 10. What do you think about that one?
Actually, I put a 6. I think that he did some good things offensively, but defensively, he was super frustrating to me in that game. Too many times he lets people get past him and score recently, and that's something where he just needs to be better. He's one of the people that I expect to play plus defense, and I think that's a big part of it. I have high expectations for him in that area, and it's just I have not seen from him lately what I've grown to expect from him on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think he did. The last couple games have been a little off for him. Dark Race, he agrees with you, says 6 sounds right for Wall. So Steven Crowell, I went with an 8. I think Steven Crowell had a great game. He had 8 assists, by the way. He was kind of a quiet, good game because obviously the effort was the most of the attention was on Max. What do you think about my 8 for Steven Crowell?
I have a 7. There were a couple passes that I didn't love from him, and a couple of times when the double came at him that I would have liked to see him react a little bit better. But I think he had a solid game, and I like to see the passing. For the most part, his passing was good. Just a couple of times, like he forced one down to Wall that wasn't there, in my opinion. It was a pretty bad turnover for somebody who's a senior. So I look at that and I'm like, I just expect more from you at this point in your career.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a really fair point. I think he does have some things where you're like, all right, at this point in your career, you should have that cleaned up. But I just think he's so important, man. Like and what he does a lot of things that don't necessarily, I mean, they do show up on the stat sheet, but when he shoots well, especially from a field goal percentage perspective, which he did, we all seem to always win because those points in the paint are so important. And I like that he's being aggressive. And yes, he's doing that hook shot over and over again, but it's effective. He's finishing better than he was at the beginning of the season, and Tyler Wall is doing the same thing, which is good. And we need those guys to be successful. All right, let's go to the bench. So we got Blackwell, Gilmore, and McGee. These guys are all the people that played over 10 minutes. I did not do a Sejan or Winter. Blackwell, I gave him a 9 out of 10. I think Blackwell was magnificent in this game, and the numbers were good. Again, went sort of under the radar because of what Klesmit did. He's so poised. He's so controlled. And we talked about this on the reaction show for those that will listen to that on Locked On. I mean, I just think he's such a fun player to watch, and he always seems to make the right decision at the right time. He has such a good feel, and when you watch him play, I think you and I both said this before, he doesn't look like a freshman. He just looks like a guy that has been playing for a couple of years, and he carries himself with such calmness out there, and that sort of calm in the face of difficult times is a key attribute in an athlete, and someone that's the kind of thing you say about a guy who turns pro. It's just like how calm he is and how poised he is. How do you feel about my 9? Do you agree with that?
I have him at 8, but I think I'm the tougher grader.
Jeez.
But I thought he had a really good game. I just think that when it comes to him, I have really high expectations based off of what we saw from him early. And to me, his 9 or 10s are going to be games where he goes for 15 plus. It's just, I think that he's capable of scoring a little bit more. He played really well. I mean, I would put him in one of the stars of this game. So, but when you look at what Max did, it's hard to put somebody even close to him when he absolutely torched and he's our 10. So unless you're putting up, in my opinion, 17 or something like that, it's going to be hard to get in the 9 category for me.
Yeah, I mean, he did shoot 4 of 6. He only played 20 minutes and he had 12 points. That's pretty good for 20 minutes.
It is. He is, and he hit a really clutch 3 right as the shot clock buzzer was going off. So that was a really big play from him to be heady and to be that pure on that. He had a great game.
He just keeps impressing us. Carter Gilmore, I gave him a 6. Good effort, but obviously had some defensive issues that I didn't think it was one of his stronger defensive games.
Listen, I'm going to give him a 7 just because he didn't botch the layup on the sweet Max pass. So,
oh man, if you don't know what Justin's talking about, if you watch that game, I mean, Max was going through, he was totally on fire, had an open 3 from the top of the key, pulled up, like he was going to shoot it, and just found a wide open Carter Gilmore, and Carter Gilmore caught it and laid it up. I don't know why he didn't dunk it, but it's fine. He did not botch the play. He got the 2 points, which was great to see. So 7 for you. Okay. And Kamari McGee, this is another 9 for me. I don't know if you're going to agree with me on this one. This is a bit much, but he played 10 minutes. Those were 10 good minutes. Okay. I think Kamari McGee brings so much energy, good lateral movement. He's a reliable defender on the perimeter. I feel like he's just going to stay with those guys. And when he's in there, you don't see that guard getting that great, easy dribble penetration that you've seen other parts of the game. I'm pulling up his numbers now. Again, they weren't like fantastic. He only scored 4 points, but he was 1 of 2, 2 of 3 from the line. He had 2 steals as well. I mean, so I love his energy, and yes, it's a pretty high grade. And that's me basically saying that I want to see more of him out there.
Yeah, I have him at an 8. He's one of those where I thought he had a really good game. Hopefully his ankle's okay. They said they didn't know in the game that whether he was going to be out for any period of time or not. And okay, looks like from P here, read his injury wasn't as bad as it seems. If that's the case, excellent. I think he's somebody they legitimately need, because if they have somebody who's hemorrhaging points off the drive, I do feel he's confident. They're confident enough in him defensively to go out there and hopefully stop the bleeding in a few games. So, yeah, I think that he played really well in this. I think he's kind of found himself a role as being somebody who can come in and provide really quality defensive minutes, as well as providing the occasional bucket here and there. And that's a really good, opportunity for him to continue to do that.
Daltrey says, Rajiv trying to be positive, and Justin just keeps bringing him down to earth. Yes, that's Justin. He's always the negative Nelly.
I gave up 79 points. I can't give everyone A's.
Tyler Strieber with his ratings here. So everybody above average then? Yes, Tyler, I did, because we also scored 91 points, and that's fair. It's a good point. Not lower than a 6. Wall and Chucky were average 5. Krause, Store a 7. Max a 10. Blackwell an 8. Gilmore a 5. McGee a 7. Really? McGee a 7, Tyler? He only played 10 minutes. He had 2 steals. Come on, give McGee a little love. But hey, it's cool. I love everyone's opinion, so that's good. But yeah, so you'll see these on Twitter from me after every game, and definitely put out your comments, and we'll bring it up on these games, and we'll see what Justin says about my crazy ratings. All right, Justin, Luke Fickell just keeps doing what Luke Fickell does and changing the culture and changing the entire defensive backfield. We have yet another recruit, Jameer Scott, safety / cornerback, probably more of a safety. Boys, film another physical defensive back. The guy that can tackle, he can run downhill. He seems to really hit the hole strong. Give me your take on Jameer Scott.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what he is. I know he's kind of shows a ton of slot film in his highlight reel. I look at him right now. I think that there's a really good chance that he ends up playing slot corner for us. And I say that as somebody, I think he's capable of being a big physical slot corner, somebody you want to line up over a tight end that can cause some problems with a bigger guy. I think he runs really well. I think he really drives well on the ball coming downhill.
Good instincts there. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's a guy who athletically, I think is a well above average athlete. I don't know if he's quite as clean from a technique standpoint as the guys we got this cycle. at cornerback. But here's the deal. I mean, most of these guys we're bringing in have huge versatility. Even Hadad, I think, could play the slot in a pinch. I think he's just got that kind of speed that you can get away with it. But all these guys, I think, are a little bit more raw, but have the physical tools to do numerous different things with them in terms of he could probably be put on the outside. He could be a boundary corner. It just may take him longer to actually get to where you want him to be if you're going to put him in that role. So it's one of those things. The way I look at it is the kid just has a lot of potential, and you're looking for the opportunity to kind of just see what he brings. He's a ball of clay that you can look at and see what his skill set provides when you really get to dig into him and see how he reacts to certain things and how his athleticism responds to a college weight program.
Yeah, he on his sophomore film, he does have a lot of boundary, not a lot, but he has some boundary corner. But on his junior film, you don't really see much of that. He mainly was in the slot, and I know that I listened to your guys' show on Locked On as well. You talked about like you don't see a lot of his like hips turning and running, so you don't really see him as a corner, this boundary corner much at all, or do you see that potential?
I just don't think that there's not a lot of film on him, so I don't know how to really project him at that. I mean, you have a play that one of the plays they show him at boundary, and he's kind of spinning around, and he looks a little lost on the play, and now he ends up picking the ball off on it, but it was not a textbook, him playing corner on that particular one. He just made an athletic play on the ball. So I think he's capable of it. I just think that there's some work you have to do there to develop him in that role if you're going to do it. I think he can help earlier in the slot or at safety if that's where you choose to use him. Like I think when Ryan and I were talking, I said nickel safety because I think that's what you do. He's a guy you can drop down into the slot depending upon formations. So I think if you're going to go 3 safeties, he's capable of playing in that. Or if you're going to put him at slot corner, I think that's the other role that you're probably putting him in.
Yeah, the common thread you see here is versatility, right? I mean, that's something that you're seeing from a lot of these guys. So we've got Cody Hadad, Jameer Scott, and Remington Moss. So, I mean, are you happy so far with the DB polls that Fickell's brought in? And how do you kind of see this room taking form now? And it's a whole different kind of guy that we're targeting. It's a little more physical, more versatility, which we've talked about a lot. It's a pretty good room he's building. And not only 25, look at the 24 class with Xavier Lucas and Agard and everybody. I mean, we're really totally changing the entire look of our defensive secondary. It's great to see. Sure.
Well, I said last year's class was probably the best corner class we've ever had. And I think from a rating standpoint, 25 is going to actually be better. I don't know if the 25 class, I look at these guys and say that I'm as cut and dry, locked in that these guys are going to be as good at, like, they're not as defined as what the guys are in the 24 class. Agard is at worst an above average slot corner to me, but he's a guy I think that can play on the outside. Lucas, I think, has a chance to be an opportunity to be a shutdown corner, and there's a lot of film playing in Florida of him. And then I think Harper is a guy who has a ton of talent too. That's just a little bit more on the raw side compared to the other 2 guys. The guys that we're getting in this class are a little bit more versatile. They're not necessarily as refined as the guys that I thought that we got last year. And I think that no matter what, you're bringing in a ton of athletes, and you kind of look at it and you're like, we'll figure out how to use you. If we can get athleticism in the room, that's where you want to be starting. So yeah, there's an opportunity for this to be a better class than what we just had. And that was one of the linchpins of that class, was the fact that we had such great secondary players that we brought in, bumping that class up.
Can you ever remember a time where we looked at the team we have and the class we have coming in 24 and the upcoming class in 25 and seeing so many athletes? I mean, it's great to see. Oh, yeah. It's just so nice to see that, like the total change in the level of athleticism that's now expected at this program.
Ryan and I talked about that when we were going over it on Locked On. I said that when you look at this, what it does when you add all these athletes in the secondary is when you're closing down windows, you're making it far more difficult for a quarterback to find opportunities to throw the ball. What does that do? That leads to him trying to force the ball into windows that aren't necessarily there, or him holding onto the ball a tick longer than he wants to and having guys get to him. It's 2 substantial things that will help with our pass rush until we can get guys who are better athletes in that front 7. And that's something that, that's the biggest area for this class that I really want to see us make a splash. It'd be amazing to see us pull in a bunch of defensive line and outside backer type guys that we can get in there that can provide a pass rush. If they do that, the level of athleticism, we can get in the same ballpark as what Penn State's been doing. And I think that we can be athletically similar to what Michigan's doing. I don't know if we can get up to the level, obviously, what Ohio State is. That's a different level from everybody. But that jump is substantial, and it puts a lot of pressure on even good quarterbacks if you can get to that level. Wisconsin's never had that. We've been really disciplined defenses in the past, but if we get these type of athletes to play at a similar level of discipline to that, it's going to be very difficult to score on this team.
Yes, it will be, and that's a beautiful thing to see. You started this earlier, Jay. Broadbar says, can you clarify if Scott knew that Hitchler was leaving when he verbal committed?
Quite honestly, I don't know. I'm guessing they probably did because it's one of the things I would do, but I don't believe that Hitchler was his lead recruiter. I think he was an Ohio kid, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Tressel was his guy.
Hitchler actually was his lead recruiter, and Paul Haynes, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So my point on this that I'll make, and it's one of the ones that I made with Hitchler leaving, is simply this: he's not going to be his positional coach, most likely. I think that's going to start out as Paul Haynes, at least initially, and so the guy you're coming into to be coached by is still there. So nothing really changes. You just had somebody that you had a good relationship with that's no longer there. But really, these guys, the ones that you're going to have to worry about are going to be Fickell and their position coach. So a little bit more worried about Hadad. But I think if it wasn't Hitchler on him, I think Tressel might have been the one that was on Hadad. So there's a possibility that Tressel moves to safeties. And if that's the case, then you have his primary recruiter going to be the guy who's also his positional coach. So there's some flexibility with what we can do from in that room that we might be able to do some things to kind of close that off. I think the bigger deal with Hitchler leaving is going to be guys that aren't committed yet. And how do you fix those? Maxwell Roy is one of the ones that I'm a little concerned about now, having Hitchler gone, because he was really recruiting the heck out of that school, Emilio Agard's school. Isaiah West is out there too, I believe. And that's one of those where it's like, you really want to get somebody in there who you feel confident building a strong relationship with those guys, because we did such an excellent job locking that school down last year. We would really like to maintain that this year with a couple of guys that can play a massive role on this recruiting class.
My take on this, Jay, is that I think that these guys they'd probably know about it. And look, I just feel like in the world of NIL and in the world of the transfer portal and how quickly guys can leave your program. Look, sometimes it's going to just happen where you get recruited by a guy and they leave and you don't really know about it and you just got to figure out what to do. But I think that if they really like this guy, which I think they really like Scott, that Tressel's in there talking to him. Obviously, Haynes was a secondary recruiter and Fickell's involved, and they're probably being open about the fact that, we might lose Hitchler, but while he was your primary recruiter, here's who your position coach is going to be this. We don't really know who it's going to be, but Bobby Haynes. And, like Justin said, it's not, I don't really think that I just don't think they would have gone through Hadad and Scott and not mention anything to them about this. Like, certainly during the initial part of the recruiting process, they're not like, oh yeah, I'm probably going to leave, because he didn't even know he was going to leave. But I feel like the more upfront you are with these kids, the better early relationships you build with them. And the relationships are so important, especially in this age of leaving whenever you want. Everyone's on a 1-year contract. So I do think that he was involved, but that's just my thought. Couple questions here from Tyler Streberg and Fickell. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually one here from Ryan Wiley. Justin, do you think that the main signing day should be in February? No, I don't. I think the earlier the better for all the teams that aren't the Blue Bloods, because what happens is you want pressure on them to not be able to just go pick and choose whoever they want. The earlier signing period means that teams like Wisconsin and all the secondary teams can lock their guys down and get them in the fold, and that they can't come and get picked off when the all-star games happen and some of these Blue Bloods miss out on a player, suddenly going down their list and being like, well, this guy's still out there, so I'm just going to go flip him before the signing day. And we've seen it happen in the past. It doesn't happen to Wisconsin a whole lot, because typically whoever they get, they do a really good job of locking down. But the last thing you want is an Ohio State or an Alabama or a Georgia looking and being like, you know what, I missed on this guy. This guy looks like a really good find. I'm going to go grab him now quick before it. And because I'm Georgia, I can just say, hey, we've got a spot for you, and we're really high on you. You know, unfortunately, they don't have to worry about building or maintaining a relationship quite as much as what Wisconsin has to.
Tyler asked the question, how important would using former players be to present in the program be for us? Like Watt being around from time to time, some running backs, linemen, et cetera, guys that went pro to vouch for UW. He also brings up Sauce Gardner in the question before. What do you think about this, Justin?
I mean, it doesn't hurt. I don't know how many times you're going to see people that are going to come through and, you know, that's going to be the reason they sign. I think they get a little starstruck maybe from it. It's cool to meet somebody who is maybe a hero or somebody who really, you know, grew up watching, and it's cool to meet some of your heroes on, you know, when you get to go to game experiences. But I think the bigger deal, I would say, is having them just publicly talk about the school is probably something that just increases visibility and reminds kids that, hey, this is the school I went to. So we've seen some of them. I know James White has been a lot more vocal this last season, and I don't think it hurts, but it's never going to be the reason that a kid comes. It's nice for them to meet those people, but I mean, Wisconsin's got some of the greatest all time, and guys like JJ Watt and who's the big fella, offensive lineman. Why am I blanking on him?
Joe Thomas?
Joe Thomas, yeah. And just being like, those are two guys that you can throw out in front of a kid and be like, yeah, these guys are like two of the best to ever play the position, you know, in NFL history. And yeah, it's cool for them to meet that guy, but you know, that'd be cool for anybody to meet that guy. It's not going to make them suddenly decide, oh, you're going to turn me into the next person. It's just, it increases probably your credibility to an extent, but I'm not sure it's going to be a defining factor.
I think that it shows team culture. I think that it shows the unity that we have with our alumni. So I think that is important. And it does kind of just help build that family atmosphere, which is always good for, I mean, you're recruiting kids. So, I mean, you got to have that. P brings up a question, which will lead us to our next topic. Also read Hadad was targeted by OSU. So we talked last week about Cody Hadad, the safety that committed last week. We now have offers from Ohio State. Yes, the Ohio State, his home state, and Iowa. Justin, your thoughts on new offers for Cody Hadad and what you feel that means for us?
He's blowing up. He's going to have probably another 10 offers, I would guess, in the next few weeks here. But I mean, you got Texas A&M too. The defining one clearly for him, getting the Minnesota offer that came in today. So Jay Kokorowski had a really good article on him talking about his family and what they thought about it and how important the Wisconsin commitment was to him. So it was a big deal for him to go to Wisconsin, and it made it sound like it's not going to really sway him one way or the other. You know, whoever offers. Now, we'll believe it when we see it when he signs on the dotted line, but it's as good as a vibe as you can get. I had heard that he did not go to Ohio State, like they had cut off a visit that he was planning for this weekend. And if that actually happened, then that's a huge deal. But they're saying the right things. And all you can do is take them at their word right now until the actions prove different. If he starts taking visits, then we know that he's not as locked in as that he said he was. But I think they had to have had the conversation with him coming into this that, hey, we're not going to offer you and be a spot to keep warm until Ohio State offers. We know that they're kind of sniffing around. Just be straight with us. We don't want to have you get an offer from them and you know, immediately jump ship. So I'm guessing that they probably had that conversation with them already. Like, if you're going to commit, make sure you're committed.
Steve Kneebone says, are we targeting Alabama players who enter the portal? Have you heard any news about any potential targets in your world of recruiting, Justin?
I would assume that if there's somebody they feel is a fit, they probably are targeting them. Now, whether or not they'll actually seriously consider us is a completely different story. As we've seen, a lot of these guys are going to other blue bloods, and that's because that's who they had their other blue blood or other opportunities from. Some are going to Georgia. Yeah, some are going to Ohio State. That's going to happen. Like that Alabama game, low key, is getting far more likely for us to be potentially in a good position to win compared to it was in previous year. Because let's be honest, they're not going to have remotely the depth that they would have had coming into that game. And they've lost a lot of top end talent. So it'll be really interesting to see. That could be like a 4 or 5 loss team in the SEC this next year with the way this is playing out. Like there's going to be some holes there and maybe some guys that aren't ready to be playing that have to be forced to be starters going forward.
I agree. I think for now, all these guys that leading Alabama are going to go to the Blue Bloods because why not? They were at Alabama. They were already at the top college football program in the country. Now they're just going to go to another top program. And if they can't make it after a year, they realize that reading the tea leaves and looking at the depth charts and where they fall, they will likely transfer at that point, which I think is acceptable and fine. And we might end up getting some of these guys not necessarily right away. Any other recruiting nuggets, Justin, from you that you want to get into this week before we move on to a little preview of basketball this week?
I mean, I'm going to continue to do evaluations. I'm going to do them a little less or a little more sporadically than what I've been doing them. I'll probably pump out like 2 or 3 a week just randomly to get some players' names out there that we're in on or that we're higher on. We put out like 200 offers a year, and I'm not going to just do them on guys that I know we really realistically have no chance in locking down. So I'll try to put out guys that I know are high targets for us that we're really putting a lot of effort into if I hear things. So, kind of that's the rule of thumb. If you're wondering why I'm coming out with certain players, it's because I think that those are guys that they're pretty high on, and try to keep some of that information out there and increase some visibility for some of these kids that we're looking at right now. Because I don't think a lot of people, like the casual fans, probably don't know as many of these guys that we're out there targeting. To be clear, these are not committed players for the most part. If it is somebody who's committed, I will reference it. But these are just more or less spotlighting kids that we're recruiting.
Yeah, it's good. If you want Justin's quick take and quick evals on any of the guys we're targeting, at Bucky Report JJ is his Twitter. It's a good. If you don't follow him, he's a good follow because he does a lot of recruiting talk on there. And Justin is our in-house recruiting expert. So we got another big week of basketball, another Tuesday, Friday week. We've got another road game against an opponent that we should win at Minnesota, and then home against Michigan State. Now, last week we talked about we were going to probably going to be 2-0 through this stretch against Penn St, Indiana. We went 1-1. We had the big road letdown. I am really looking for a bounce back, especially at Minnesota. It's the barn. It's a game that it's a rival. It's always going to be a little tough in there. It's not an easy environment to win, but it is a game that we should win, and it's a game that we simply cannot afford to drop because after the Penn State loss, that hurt us. And if we really have aspirations to win this conference, we need to win these kinds of games. We simply cannot lose them. But it's going to happen though. You're going to lose games on the road in the Big Ten. And I want those to be, we don't play Illinois on the road. I want those to be at Purdue. I know we're going to lose that game and we're going to have some tough games at, other places, but this is not one of those that I really feel like we need to lose. Now, Minnesota has played a little better than originally expected. Do you see any issue with the Minnesota game? Are you looking for a bounce back? Do you think this week we go 2-0?
I think they'll be locked in for this game. We dislike Minnesota from what I can tell, and I think that is just across the campus, like one of those schools that we view as a rival. That we're not going to lose this game. We're more locked in for these, and at least for me, I know that the writers on 247 that talk about it, that the basketball one, for whatever reason, has the most ridiculous perspective on this, that they can hang with us. If Wisconsin brings their A game in this, they're going to blow Minnesota off the court. Like, they're not capable of playing with us. They're not nearly as skilled, and they're not nearly as locked in as a team in terms of efficiency or anything else. So they are, to me, a bottom feeder team in the Big Ten still. And I think that that's where they belong. And I think Wisconsin should treat them as such.
I mean, you're never going to hear love for a Minnesota team on this channel. Minnesota did start off 3-1 in conference. They have lost their last 3. They lost at Indiana. They lost at home to Iowa, and they lost on the road at Michigan State. So yes, we should do well. I'm once again looking for Chucky Hepburn to really lead the troops out there. I want to see his offense get better. I want to see us start the game stronger. If we turn the ball over 3 times the first 5 minutes, I'm going to turn the game off. Honestly, I just can't see another start like that. I can't go down 10-2, and then we're chasing the game and we're trying to get into it. And we're going to have to figure out a way to control our defense and stop allowing dribble penetration, because I think we are one of the best teams in this conference. But these are the exact types of games that when you don't win the conference, it means you lost these types of games. Penn State was one of those, right?
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota's another one. I mean, if you look down the Big Ten Conference and you look at, teams that are kind of at the bottom, like Rutgers and Michigan and even Maryland, who has had a huge letdown after their early season expectations. Those are games you can't lose on the road. So I do expect us to go 2-0 this week. Since we're not going to do a show before the Minnesota game, give me a score prediction, Justin, at Minnesota on Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Central Time. What is your prediction?
78-62 Wisconsin.
Wow, just a blowout at the barn. I love it. I agree with you. I think it's going to be 80-65. I think we win by 15. We're going to get in the 80s again because we just do. I don't see a time where we're not going to. Even when we lose on the road at Penn State, we got to 83. So I think we score over 80 again, maybe even 82, something like that. But I think I also agree. Double-digit win, hopefully by 15 plus. And we just need to get our mojo back. Road games are really hard. They are really hard to win, and we need to start racking up those games because let me tell you something. Purdue and Illinois, they're going to win games on the road. And if we want to compete,
they're going to make us have to bring it.
That's right. They are only half a game back. They're waiting for us to lose so they can take over the top spot, and that's not going to be this week. Justin, final thoughts about anything basketball, recruiting, anything else you want to get into?
No, I think we had a solid week. Let's keep it going. Let's maybe sneak another commit. I have, to be clear, no knowledge of anyone that's supposed to be coming out, but I would love to see another one pop in. Keep this class rolling for the early part of the 2024. But it's been a good week. Let's keep it going. Let's keep rolling into the spring. And maybe we'll start getting some spring conditioning info coming out because I believe they're in their weight training and stuff like now for the football team.
Yes. Hopefully Brady Collins is doing his thing and just, seeing some games. And
we'll get our speed graphic up.
Yeah. And Justin and Ryan and I think are talking initial talks about potentially going to the spring game, right? We haven't decided yet for sure, but if we do, and if we come to Madison again, we will certainly let everybody know because it's been great to come there and hang out with everyone. But yeah, a lot to look forward to again this week. Let's go 2-0. Let's get it done. Take care, everyone. Thanks for listening. And with that, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.